Hi everyone, it's Nicole Spohr and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be creating a Belladonna lily stamp layering floral card with a matching envelope. I have not done a matching envelope in a hot minute, and I thought this gorgeous new stamp set from Altenew really would be perfect for this particular technique. In addition, we're going to do one of my favorite stencil layering backgrounds to set off the gorgeous new Belladonna lily. I'm going to start by placing the outline stamp from the 6x8 Build a Flower stamp set in the lower right corner of a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch piece of smooth white cardstock. Now, I am using this size and doing it this way because I'm going to be able to get 2 florals from this without having to move my stamp. If you wanted to create even more cards, maybe you want to do a whole set of cards, I would do a whole bunch of panels just like this. I'm going to be using 2 of these bunches on my card. That's why I decided to stamp both of these like this. I can line up the stamp one time, flip the cardstock around, and stamp it again. If I was going to create 10 cards, I could do this, 10, 20 times, however many you want to do. After I've stamped the outline with black ink, I am taking Pawsitively saturated ink from Simon Says Stamp in the color Carnation and stamping the base color for my lily. That little spot in one of the petals is it's a problem with my stamp. I did get an early release stamp set, and there's just a little fault or something in my stamp. It didn't really bother me, but I did want to point it out that that is not normal. Next, I am going to stamp layer number 2. This is the Peony color. I'm using the pink color combination or pink color trio from Simon Says Stamp, and then I will also be using red for my final layer. Look at the detail coming through. I know so many of you love layering stamps or layering stencils, especially if you don't particularly enjoy coloring. I'm going to go ahead and just give my flowers a bit of a break and stamp the stems for both flower bundles or stems of flowers. I'm using the Sage Simon Says Stamp ink for the base color. And then I'm going to go ahead and stamp the pine. Now, the reason I just gave my flowers a break, I do like to let the colors absorb into the cardstock a bit before moving on to the next layer or stamp, mostly because if it gets too oversaturated, sometimes you can lose a little of the detail. So I will try to give it a minute or two to dry before adding that next layer. The second layer for the stem was the color Pine. I will go ahead now and grab the third layer for my Belladonna lilies, and Altenew does such a fantastic job labeling what step is what, so it'll have like a 1, 2, 3, 4, which makes it really easy to know what order to stamp each stamp. This is the rose color, and the detail is even more defined and so beautiful. I'm going to grab my fourth and final layer for the flowers. And for this layer, we are going to use the Simon Says Stamp Pawsitively saturated ink in the color Cherry. And with that, the majority of the florals are done. Now, Altenew also includes in the stamp set the little teeny tiny stamp to fill in the center. And there's one for each one of the flowers. Some of them are going to show up more than others. If you are particularly good with your MISTI and lining things up, you could probably line them all up and stamp them at once. I found it easiest to actually use an acrylic block with the CITRINE Simon Says Stamp ink. So this is a yellow. It's pretty small, but I do think it adds a nice little detail to the finished design. And so I'm simply going to take each of the little individual stamps and stamp those right there. Then I'm going to take the coordinating die for the Belladonna lily and I'm going to die cut each of these flower bundles. What I love is it die cuts all around the flowers, even like the little in-between spots. So you get a much nicer die cut than just maybe a standard outline. Once we have our flowers and we have them all die cut, it's time to create our background. I wanted something soft and pretty, but still something interesting to showcase these beautiful florals. My go-to is generally a background stamp or stenciling. Today we're going to do stenciling and we're going to use my favorite Simon Says stamp A2 masking stencils. If you wanted to do a slimline, they've got slimline masking stencils, mini slimline, circle masking stencils, so there's lots and lots of options. And I'm first going to take the second largest rectangle from that set with my Carnation Pawsitively Saturated ink, and we're going to ink around the perimeter of this rectangle. I'm going to use a pretty light hand. I don't want to go super deep and dark, but you can obviously do whatever you prefer here. I'm going to go all the way around the perimeter of this. I did concentrate my ink a little darker down near the bottom for a natural ombre effect, tone-on-tone ombre effect. Then I'm going to take my favorite Simon Says stamp, medium dots stencil, and we are going to stencil the dots with the same color, Carnation, right over top. And again, darker down at the bottom, lighter up at the top. Then I'm going to remove both stencils and we're left with a layered design that looks like it's matted with that big, bold white border all the way around. I absolutely love the effect. Next, I'm going to take my two die cuts and figure out where I want them to go on the panel. I already know that I want one of them kind of coming up from the bottom right corner, and then I'm going to have the rest of them dangling down from the top, but we'll likely trim away quite a bit of that, leaving room for our sentiments in between. I placed foam adhesive on the back of the bunch down in the lower right, and then I'm going to flip over the other flower and add some foam adhesive to this one as well. I need to be a little creative with this as I don't want the foam adhesive hanging off the edge of the card. So you might see me keep testing it, seeing where all I need to add my foam adhesive. I'm using the scrapbook adhesives, foam adhesive squares, which are my favorite. I'm going to peel off my backing paper, pop this in place, and then go ahead and trim off the excess. Now, I probably should have stamped the hello prior to placing these, but I didn't, and it's going to be just fine because the Misty can handle it perfectly. I did add one foam adhesive square where I didn't want to, of course, so I did remove that. And here I'm just taking my scissors and snipping away that extra. This is a fantastic way to frame up a nice little sentiment with these beautiful florals. You could do something similar with any kind of floral stamp set that you have. I'm going to stamp the hello right underneath the top bunch of florals using some rose ink. Now you might have seen this hello stamp set the greetings from the Belladonna Lily stamp set in action in my embossing folder video that I'm linking at the end of this video. I had used sentiments from this stamp set for all of those embossing folder cards. So if you were wondering where all those sentiments came from, this is it. It was just a little sneak preview. After I've stamped my sentiment with the rose colored ink, I'm going to grab another phrase and another piece of smooth white cardstock, and I'm going to stamp the rest of my sentiment with pine ink. I decided to use Thinking of You, My Friend, so that my sentiment will read, Hello, thinking of you, my friend. I thought that this was a really beautiful way to create a Thinking of You style card. Something else that you could do is you could change out the sentiment with any other sentiment that you might have in your stash. I'm going to place some foam adhesive on the back of my sentiment strip and pop it up in place right here under hello. I like how I can kind of tuck some of this underneath one of the blooms from my floral on the bottom for a beautiful kind of result where it all ties together. And I also like that my sentiments are all stamped in a colorful ink. I'm going to place this entire panel on a white top fold card base and finish the design with a scattering of some little heart embellishments. I always love to have a little heart embellishment here and there. These are some Hint of Mint from Trinity stamps. I didn't really have anything in the right color of pink or purple to match my ink choices, and so I went more the green route, and I'm glad I did because I think that it's a very, very subtle green. It's a hint of mint, but it works really nicely with this design. After I've added my trio of heart embellishments, I thought we definitely needed to stamp a coordinating envelope. I kind of have gotten away from that here for a while, and I need to get back into it. I think I've just forgotten because I absolutely love the look of a coordinating envelope. I love making out the envelope to send. I love looking at it. It's so much prettier than a just plain Jane envelope. And it's really simple if you have all the supplies out to go ahead and create one, especially with stencils or layering stamps like this. So we're again going to grab our outline stamp and stamp it with black ink. I think I forgot to mention I'm using the Hero Arts Intensified Black Ink for my outline stamping. I re-inked my ink pad in between the card and my envelope, and I think it's working a lot better. I don't know that I've ever re-inked it, and I use it so much that it definitely needed it. Then we're going to follow the same process as before with Carnation ink as our base color. Now the cardstock for this particular envelope, and I think this is an envelope from Simon Says Stamp. 99% of my envelopes are from Simon Says Stamp. I don't get white envelopes all that often, but white definitely I felt like looked the best with my card and would showcase the stamp set the best. Would show it off the best. So I used it, but I think it's kind of a little bit of a slicker cardstock. It probably came in a card kit at some point. And so I was very careful to try not to oversaturate the cardstock too much at one time. Just like when I stamped the flower before, I'm going to stamp my first 2 layers and then I'm going to let that sit and I'm going to stamp the stem. I do want to mention that I messed up my first envelope. So this step here, it might change where it looks just a little bit on the next envelope or here on the screen, because before I stamp this 3rd layer, I'm actually going to stamp the stem first. I bumped my envelope and I stamped it without noticing that it was down in the corner, and so it stamped the stem off when I originally did it. I always like to totally be transparent with you guys and let you know when I make those mistakes. We're using Sage and Pine inks for the stem again. I absolutely love the Simon Says Stamp Pawsitively Saturated inks. I am going to be sharing my swatches for these. I believe next weekend, I think, is where I have it scheduled in my calendar. So definitely stay tuned for that for anyone who has been asking or who said that they would like to see that when I mentioned it in a previous video. Now we're going to do layer 3, which again is the rose color. My steps for the flower are Carnation, Peony, Rose, and Cherry, and then the stem is Sage and Pine. And it definitely looked better the second time, so I'm kind of glad I redid it. And it didn't take that much time at all. And final layer. make sure it's down in the corner really good, is cherry. Any darker color ink would look good here. I even considered maybe a purplish color ink, like a deep dark purple or something. I think that would look pretty too. Then I'm going to stamp the centers of the flowers again, and that is with the CITRINE ink. I'm going to use my ink block, and we'll just go around and finish that off. You definitely don't have to. It's probably be quicker to take a yellow marker and color those in. I honestly didn't think of it until I was done, and then I thought, you know, I really could have just colored that and it probably would have been quicker, but that's totally okay. The final thing I'm going to do for the envelope is flip it over, and on the back flap I am using another phrase from the Belladonna Lily stamp set that says, "Hope this brightens your day." I thought this was the perfect greeting to put on that back flap, so as the recipient opens up the envelope, not only are they treated with the beautiful floral on the front, but there's a fun little greeting on the back flap. So you guys keep me accountable. I definitely want to be stamping more coordinating envelopes that match my cards, because I forgot how much I love the finished look. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this stamp layering card and matching envelope. The supplies I used to create my card are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Please be sure to visit my blog post linked below for a chance to win some incredible prizes from Altenew. I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to my Patreon members. If you want to become a member of Patreon, please click the link in the description below. We would love to see you over there. Here is another video featuring Altenew that you might be interested in. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel, click that like button, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to always be notified when I have a new card making video. As always, thank you guys so much for joining me today, and we will see you next time.